I'm recording.
We're back?
We're back.
We're back. There's a party going on.
There's a party. There's nothing we can do.
Yeah, this is like the zoo episode.
Yeah.
We'll just like taxonomize the people at the party. It's a kid's birthday party.
It's a spirited birthday celebration for one of Eli's neighbors, I guess.
Yeah. A neoliberal bunker.
So that's some ambient noise.
Hey kids, what do you think of Jon Rafman? You ever heard of Jon Rafman, kids?
Hey kids, did you read the Harper's letter? What do you guys think about cancel culture? Real or not real?
Yeah. More cancel culture shit. I hate this term so much. I want to banish it from the English language.
What do you prefer?
I don't know. It's not one thing.
Yeah, it's
I think it's like a proxy for there's like different flavors.
Culture war.
Yeah, it's culture war. That's a better term.
That much is clear.
Yeah.
It came out that Glenn Greenwald was not asked to sign the Harper's letter.
Oh, the cancel culture. Yeah.
Because many of its signees disagreed with his views.
Yeah, and Thomas Chatterton Williams, who's like a black intellectual and a writer.
Chatterton?
Yeah, T-Chat, as I like to call him.
Okay.
He's a fine brother. He looks like Pushkin.
Hot.
Yeah, he's a cutie, but
Black Russian.
He and what I've read of his work has been totally serviceable and good. He's a pretty decent writer, but he's kind of like an anti-woke black intellectual, from what I understand. I'm not like super familiar, but he organized this letter. Okay. And he told like Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi that Glenn, he had thought of asking Glenn, but was voted out. Okay.
Well, Glenn's the only journalist with any integrity. Yeah. So, not to mention a real warrior for free speech.
Yeah. He's like the warrior. He and Michael Tracy, the only two journalists who don't belong in prison. And Lee Fang.
Yeah, free Lee Fang.
But I guess people are really worked up about like the blatant hypocrisy of canceling somebody in the context of penning an anti-cancel culture letter.
Right. Canceling someone's participation in the anti-cancellation letter. Well, we weren't asked to sign it either.
I mean, I don't think we're we're not on that radar.
What do you mean? Harper's, we're well liked there.
They know that we can't. We don't know how to write or sign.
So we can't read the letter. I still haven't mastered using my opposable thumb. So like a monkey, I would just leave a little paw print on the letter. using two sticks to light your cigarette. I just wipe some of my menstrual blood on the letter.
Yeah, like eyeliner. I don't know.
Tear stains.
It's hilarious. And Glenn was like sort of tweeting about it. It's ridiculous. I don't know what else to say. It clearly defeats the purpose of the letter, but also reveals that cancel culture and free speech are kind of a moot argument to have because nobody agrees on the terms. Right.
On what kind of speech should be privileged.
Yeah.
Except for Glenn, who really does protect all speech.
Yeah. Well, he made the point, the kind of obvious technical point that like, well, you know, free speech is protected by the First Amendment, but that mainly pertains to it being protected against government intervention, right? Like, and we're talking about corporate entities, not state entities, which is like. But then he goes on.
That's why YouTube is able to like deplatform people because
like Nassim Ogden, yeah.
Exactly. Or Sam Hyde or whatever.
Yeah, but and then he goes on to make the kind of broader point that outside of having a fairly cramped, technical, legalistic definition, free speech is also a liberal value that people should want to protect or whatever. I mean, he took it pretty well because I feel like he probably doesn't care either way. Yeah. He's like busy. He's hanging out with his hot husband.
Hosting his great show, looking great, looking young.
He was so busy grooming his husband, he forgot to sign the letter.
a long 15-year grooming process. It's been very time consuming.
Well, that's how they do it. It's a time investment.
Exactly. You got to do it right. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah. You'll both be dead by the time it's over, like of old age, of natural causes.
Yeah. You'll be married next to each other.
Yeah. Actually having side-by-side plots is a form of grooming. Because it means you're dragging that person into the afterlife with you, which is sick. I don't know. I mean, my question is, what views could Glenn possibly have that this group of people found objectionable? Like what, that he didn't buy into Russiagate, that he groomed his husband? Like what, like on what basis?
Probably the Russia stuff or the, I don't know. Hillary, I don't know, WikiLeaks shit. There's a lot of hostility for that. People are so, even these so-called freedom fighters end up being so cucked by the smallness of their minds.
Yeah, and like you realize that like cancel culture is basically, or whatever you want to call it, is like a function. It's just like people are professionally jealous and competitive and cowardly. Mm-hmm. There's a small group of people who are jealous and seek to, like, I don't know, silence or ignore dissenting or bold voices. I don't know, this sounds really gay. And then most other people are just cowardly and fall in line. Yeah,
that sounds like a pretty good diagnosis of what's going on.
Yeah, it's not really like a free speech argument per se, though I appreciate actually Glenn making it into a free speech argument and being like the only one who's like basically competent to talk on it, like speak on it. But I think like the mistake that everybody makes is thinking that just because you're part of a protected class or category now that you will continue to be in the future. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason that you won't be vilified in the future. Like the intra-elite warfare train stops for nobody.
Well, yeah. Well, we thought, you know, women really had a premium on speaking after Me Too.
Yeah.
We believed them all. And then now Karens have come under fire. And now we don't really want to hear from them so much anymore.
Yeah, white women used to be equivalent to black men on the oppression totem pole, and now they're like beneath white men because they've been such shrill exponents of cancel culture themselves. So they kind of did it to themselves. It's like karmic retribution.
Totally. It makes sense.
But like, you know, and black trans women are the current symbolic avatar.
Oppressed.
Yeah, they're the most protected and the most oppressed, and they have a lot of power but no authority because they're such a demographically minuscule population that you can like, it's easy to use them as a pawn and go to bat for them without ever having to meet one.
Right. To use them sort of symbolically.
Yeah. And like my feeling of what will happen is that there's going to be even more fragmentation.
Yeah, it certainly seems like there's almost some kind of a gender incentive to divide people.
Yeah, or a racial one. Like I predict that there's going to be warfare brewing among African immigrants and African Americans. Because right now they're all coded as black, but African Americans are less wealthy and less educated on average than African immigrants who are vying for these new kind of
able to immigrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suspect there's going to be probably some sort of like inter-trans warfare among kind of gay guys who became women and then straight guys who became women. And I feel like if you crunch them, this is my hunch. I don't know if it's going to happen, but like
I think that there will be LGBT kind of non-binary schism.
Yeah, wait, femsplain that. Somebody told me to say femsplain instead of womansplain. I think it sounds better. Yeah. So shout out to that guy or girl.
Well, because the idea of, you know, gender being non-binary sort of directly contradicts kind of previous tenets of LGBT politics, which advocate on the basis of being one gender that is sexually attracted to the same gender.
Right. Yeah.
And even even the trans discourse is different from non-binary discourse, right? Because trans means to cross over to become the other one, but it still is, you know, dealing in a binary. And now there's many more people who identify as non-binary who are kind of like advocating for a more amorphous gender discourse, and those are just fundamentally incompatible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I mean, I suspect, the original kind of definition of trans implied that if you were a man, you became a woman. I'm going to get canceled for saying trans woman.
If you were a man.
But it's funny also, nobody talks about female to male trans because they're kind of irrelevant, obsolete to the discourse because they chose to transition into like the oppressor class, right? On some level.
There was some chick on Rogan I heard when I was in an Uber who was talking about how female to male, like teen girls are becoming trans increasingly.
Whoa,
this is a concerning trend.
Okay.
But I didn't listen. I don't even know who she was. I didn't listen to the whole episode,
classic
obviously.
TERF behavior.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a kind of, I'm curious to see like a statistical breakdown of the new incidences of men becoming women. How many of those are originally gay and originally straight? And I suspect the ones who are straight are shooting up more than the gay ones. And also, like, I'd like to see that breakdown across racial and income lines.
Okay.
Because I think the ones who are straight who become kind of trans women and become lesbians effectively probably are on average more frequently white and middle class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm like not ascribing.
Like Samantha Pritchard.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or Charlotte Clymer.
I don't know her.
Another, like a Bidenite.
Oh,
she's
weird.
like a Biden girl.
Yikes. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, but all I'm saying is that this kind of intra-elite warfare is going to fragment into ever kind of more specific microgroups because it's a vicious game of musical chairs.
Right.
There's less and less chairs available.
Solidarity is clearly not the goal.
Yeah.
We're not interested in having more chairs.
I actually like the way that Campbot, even though I'm not supposed to mention his name because some people really hate him among our fans. I like the way that he broke it down in terms of like a prisoner's dilemma. Yeah. So like, in the prisoner's dilemma, like the optimal solution is for people to cooperate and like not snitch each other out.
Yes.
But people end up snitching each other out because they assume the other one will. So you end at a rational but suboptimal outcome, which is woke culture in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. It is kind of like in a really kind of reductive way or like a schematic way, game theory problem, not to sound like Eric Garland.
The finger pointing.
Yeah.
It certainly seemed that way in the early waves of Me Too, which I guess was like 3 years ago now, that it seemed like deflective.
We were in diapers.
People were like, don't examine any of my behavior, but like look at that guy over there who's like jacking off into a houseplant or something.
into a cup. And I kind of feel like, like this has nothing to do with Glenn really as a person. Like you can take him as a person out of this equation. It's just like at this point
it has to do with the homogeny of any given group's kind of thinking, even if they purport to be defenders of liberty.
Yeah.
That ultimately they're subject to the same kind of echo chamber.
Yeah. But I mean, he's almost like, he's like a symbolic avatar at this point, or like an effigy, because his cumulative reputation among certain people is that he's bad.
Yeah, exactly. Like us.
Yeah, like us. Yeah. It's funny because I'll read like negative stuff about us that's like a kind of third or fourth removed commentary in like a game of telephone that people are clearly repeating and don't have any like instinct for.
Yeah.
And it's just like a form of social signaling that's really not personal. Totally.
No, I think every like couple weeks at least I'll name search like Dasha and Anna or Red Scare Girls, and there'll be some like random person who's like, is Red Scare podcast good or bad? And then like it's like there'll be like 30 comments of people being like, they're bad, and then being like, oh, okay, thanks. Like just kind of like affirming one another.
Yeah.
In an echo chamber, like I said, just like totally inconsequential, weird virtue signaling.
Yeah, and it's just like, it feels kind of weird just being kind of like a symbolic pawn, because again, they don't really know anything about you. They don't really care to find out anything about you, but it's a form of social signaling, and the issue is more about them than you. I heard, or somebody that I'm like in a group chat with said a really smart thing, that wokeness is a displacement activity for boomers who to atone for doing a shitty job raising their children because they were so shitty, they were like so selfish and like checked out. And for millennials, it's a displacement activity because they've never owned and will never own any assets.
Right.
Like the minute that you have something riding on the line, you become less woke and more conservative.
Right.
And like stop giving a shit about proxy wars.
Because you have something to lose.
Yeah. The funny thing, there was like a side note to all this. I saw this interaction between T-Chat and this guy, Matt Lubchansky, on Twitter. Matt Lubchansky is one of these like Samantha Pritchard, Charlotte Clymer, gender non-binary. I think I don't know. She's trans. They.
I don't know.
I don't know anything about this person, and I'm not passing judgment. But T-Chat, they were going at it, and T-Chat responded, "You look interesting," because the Avi is like, And then he like deleted.
I don't know what T-Chat is.
Oh, Thomas Chatterton. That's just my shitty nickname for him.
I see.
But he wrote, "You look interesting," and then deleted it and apologized because he was like, probably like, shit, I'm gonna get canceled for.
It's a tough time to be online for sure in many ways.
No, I know. Well, it's really scary because now I'm seeing people, like even people who I like and respect, like posting their text messages or like their rejected pitches, and like, it's behavior that like your parents didn't raise you this way.
No, I mean maybe they did.
Maybe they did.
My parents certainly did not.
Yeah,
that's why you would never catch me snitching.
Yeah, and it's like, you're making the other person look silly, but the price is that you're also making yourself look silly. It's like a no-win situation.
Yeah.
And it's really sad to see everybody so obsessed with their careers, which again, I don't say that as an insult. Everybody's very nervous and precarious. But like, are you willing to part with your dignity and self-respect over
just the kind of careerist mindset, the preoccupation with scarcity and networking, which I'll come back to. Networking. С моими одноклассниками. Yeah, it's not, it doesn't lend to a productive, healthy culture, I think.
No, I would say, it's a profoundly pathological, psychotic culture, but we can debate whether cancel culture is real and whether it actually actively harms people in perpetuity.
I just think that there's so many variables even in that convo.
Like we can talk about this endlessly forever. And like the bigger question.
Good thing we have all these podcast episodes to record.
We'll do a special episode on cancel culture.
And podcast for the rest of our lives because we sold our souls to
the podcasting Faust. But the bigger question is like, what does telling on somebody say about you as a person? Like is that really the example that you want to set for your loved ones, your kid, your wife, your family? Like, cancel culture isn't about other people, it's about you.
Yes.
On some level. No, I'm serious.
No, I agree with you completely.
I think like you have to ask, what is it you really want, and can you achieve it through alternate means that allow you to preserve your dignity and self-respect?
Yes. Rather than like having a kind of macro structural conversation about cancel culture existing or not based on like shifting power dynamics. I think the more productive conversation to have, is like, what are people's psychological motivations to cancel others? To tyrannize over people.
Yeah, to tyrannize over people. Why? What do you seek and desire that this kind of action temporarily like fills the void of?
Should we talk about Rafman?
Yeah, on that note.
There's a new Instagram account called Surviving the Art World with underscores, wherein women who seem to be primarily based in Montreal are able to submit a Google Doc survey form, either anonymously or not, calling out abusers and predators in, quote, the art world who they feel wronged by. And this account will not only post anyone's testimony, they will also tag the various institutions that these people are affiliated with in an attempt to get them de-acquired, canceled,
deterritorialized,
essentially. And Jon Rafman was sort of the first one.
Jon Rafman, for people who don't know, is a kind of post-net internet artist. The Instagram, first of all, Montreal is not the art world. That's our first mistake. There's no art world in Montreal. But people are
in the Montreal
art scene. I don't know. It's so weird. But like, I don't want to do that thing where I'm like Zizek or Chris Kraus defending Avital Ronell because, you know, she's one of ours and we're like protecting our collective interests. But we should talk about kind of the pragmatic questions of like the principle of it all, because it's so weird. Like, we live in this weird necrophiliac society because there's no past and no future, where people are just like digging up corpses of old shit that happened years ago.
So this was the first one. That's sort of, it seems that the girl who wrote this also maybe made and manages the Surviving the Art World account, which has blocked me because I've been a vocal defender of Rafman because no one else seems to.
Wait, am I blocked?
No, I doubt it.
I'm not blocked. I don't think I'm blocked.
I mean, I looked at it today. Myself into the conversation.
Yeah, you parachuted into the discourse.
The Jon Rafman defender has logged on, and I'm not logging off until some wrongs are made right. Okay,
but okay, there's like 5 or 6 posts on this Instagram account, and like 3 of them are relevant to Jon Rafman.
Yeah, they're. But it's just getting warmed up. They're also, it's per kind of thing, what I've said before about marketing logic infecting people's politics. This account is also very like branded, cohesive. All the accounts are written in the second person, i.e. using like an omniscient you as to refer to Rafman as if they're like addressing him. It's actually kind of appropriating like slam poetry.
It is. It's artistic
to me.
Well, that's what I noticed when I first looked at it. The way that it's written in this kind of like detached way, that it has a kind of quiet literary gusto. Like, in spite of the clinical account, you can detect her zeal. Like, it's almost like she's jockeying for a spot on the McNally Jackson staff picks table, you know, alongside like Sally Rooney or something. And she's like addressing him like, I'm 21. You're 33.
Yeah.
Anyway,
there's buzz around you. Everyone I know talks about you. Prior to that, she says, I'm studying at Concordia University. I have but one desire, to dive head into the local contemporary art scene.
Your first mistake, bitch. I'm sorry. What?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's your singular desire. So she comes across Rafman. At this point, I've known your work for quite some time. I'm enthralled by the dystopian atmosphere and the twisted ideas that radiate from it. The dark web, blah, 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 intriguing, enticing. I keep hearing more and more about your activity in Montreal. One day, in the hopes of possibly accessing the bigger picture, I muster up the courage to add you to Facebook. You tell me you're in a chic hotel in New York. You send me pictures of the luxurious bathtub and sprawling windows. I'm immediately impressed. Blah, blah, blah. They meet. She goes on to say, you offer me tequila. I try to stimulate conversation, which ends up being completely futile. You're not listening to me at all. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know how or what ensued, but we end up sleeping together. Convenient.
couldn't see that one coming.
What could he want? I was so
what could he
confused.
possibly?
I was only 21 years old.
I mean, and she talks about how she talks about how she felt adrenaline shooting through her body when he invited her to this boutique hotel because she knew what might transpire but couldn't forego an opportunity to have a drink and chit chat. Those are her words about digital art. And it's like, no. You're lying to us, but actually lying to yourself. And it's frankly insulting to everybody involved. It's like, you knew you wanted to go there and have kind of some sort of amorous exchange and make him fall in love with you. Yeah. Your mistake was narcissistically thinking that you were somehow unique and special and this guy would be completely enamored of you.
Right.
And it's like, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I've met John a handful of times. He seems like a perfectly nice and normal guy. I like his girlfriend a lot. She's Russian. Yeah. She knows my cousin in Moscow. Sweet girl. Sweet girl.
Sweet girl. Very nice Russian girl.
Very intelligent and very pretty. But I don't really know him that well as a person, but I know enough of these like net art bros, and they're very single-minded. They want an art career. They're hardworking and they have ambition. They don't care about women.
I mean, not necessarily.
No, I mean, they care about, I think like any normal kind of ambitious person with self-respect, they eventually find a woman who they like, who is special to them. And then guess what? She becomes their long-term girlfriend. But generally speaking, it's totally normal for like an attractive, talented guy to cycle through groupie hoes.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what rap is all about.
I think that it's important not to lose sight of the fact that all of the three sort of allegations against Rafman are basically written by jilted groupies. They all admit, even as they like deny having any agency, that they were attracted to him, that he did not coerce them into sex, just that they felt badly afterwards because he didn't care enough.
He wasn't that interested in them.
Why would he be?
And like, this is not even a personal judgment on either party involved. And like,
if you respect yourself so little to, by the way, in 2014, I had sex with a net artist and I regret
me too, or a net art critic.
And I regretted it. And I call that a lesson learned.
Yeah. That's how, listen, I had a 2-year relationship with a net art critic. I regretted the whole thing, and what can I do about it?
Yeah, certainly not shame him on the internet.
Yeah, and it's like, her first mistake is buying into this kind of idea that the art world, especially the marginal art world, not like the high roller art world that none of us are privy to, is not like is like a special, cool, edgy place, and not like a depressing shithole full of unpleasant woke scolds with tiny glasses who do shitty blow. Like, seriously, sometimes the best thing that happens is you get invited to like a chic gallery dinner. And then her second mistake is like worshiping a guy who's like a mere mortal and frankly not worthy of more worship on some level. And this is, again, nothing against John, but he's a human being.
Exactly.
He's like literally a working artist. He's not like Quavo or whoever.
He is successful.
He is successful, but crucially, he's not blue chip, Jeff Koons, whatever, Mike Kelly level, which is why this woman even lodged these allegations. Mm-hmm. And like, I understand, it's an honest mistake to make, to be enamored with and worship a guy out of like this confusion of sexual attraction and professional competition.
Yes.
It's a totally honest mistake to make when you're like 18, 19, 20, 21. But she's writing from a place of hindsight half a decade later.
Yeah. That's really what is so deranged about it.
Yeah, I understood. I mean, I understand if she felt that way then.
Yes.
And regretted it and felt shitty. I get it. We've all been there, done that. But like, you only have to glance at that first slide. Like, every step of the way, this girl's like telling on herself, like airing her at best misguided, at worst craven ambitions. Like, if you want to be an artist, focus on your art, as I'm sure Jon Rafman did at the expense of most other things, right? Which is why he's successful.
Right.
He's hardworking.
She says, here's another excerpt from her. At the bar, you barely make eye contact with me. I'm obviously irritating you. Poor clingy girl who serves no purpose other than satisfying your desires.
Love that one.
Telling on herself.
Yeah.
I'm an accessory. Looking around the bar, I'm afraid of familiar faces. What will they think if they see us together? But more importantly, what will they think of me? Because you have it all. The hype, money, stability, fame and success, insurance. I'm only there to add a little bit of flesh to the skewer.
Don't flatter yourself, honey.
Yeah, as if you didn't want people to see you there with him so that they would talk about how you were spotted together. As if your motivations, which, by the way, mirror your motivations in calling him out again, is to kind of get validation and clout from associating with him. That's what you wanted the first time. That's still what you want, except now you're opportunizing on another kind of angle to get it.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, she wanted to be screen tested for like the role of girlfriend, or at least Gumar. I mean, and like, you know, there's a point where she talks about how he's telling her like horny stuff, like I want to throw you against a wall and like lick your body. And she's like asking him why he's into her.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, this is why he lost interest in you also, because like men want a casual, positive sexual experience.
I'll also say as a caveat that this was 2014, during which hookup culture was alive and well. Another one of the girls said one of the first things she says is, I swiped right on him on Tinder. Yeah. And regretted it, whatever.
Because
but like,
my friend was having sex with him and I wanted to be loyal to my friend. But guess what? I ended up falling on his dick by accident.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
We matched on Tinder. I went to his apartment. What could he want?
We just wanted to talk about digital art and Artie Vierkant's triangles. I was so
confused. I thought we were going to talk about post-internet art with my Tinder date.
Yeah. But it's like, you know, women will be like, oh, the art world is a patriarchy. They say this about like virtually every industry. It's like, bitch, if you just dressed nice and looked the part and like memorized some good Bitcoin jokes, not even good ones, your art doesn't even have to be that good. You would be fast-tracked, frontlined to like the art fair circuit because they're desperate to neutralize their image and they love women and people of color. The white man's reign is over in the art world. It's been over. That's why you're allowed to run an Instagram throwing random guys under the bus for like not criminal or misconduct type offenses.
For making a negative comment at a critique.
Yeah.
The most recent one that's not for Jon Rafman, but someone else that's literally the complaint. I kept waiting for it to get worse. All of these I'm reading like, okay, like, and then I guess the rape's coming up in the next slide, and like 20 slides later, it's like, I felt used and bad about myself for having sex with this person.
Yeah, because it didn't, you know, parlay into any concrete career or girlfriend opportunities.
And no one successful seems to be me doing Jon Rafman. So
I know.
That might be
I mean, and also like it's written in this style of like, it's like supermarket erotica, but like user generated fanfic erotica.
Yeah.
And then he threw me against the wall and tore off my panties.
My flesh. Yeah. She says flesh twice.
And it's like, you know, here's the thing too. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to sound like Camille Paglia here. If you show up to a man's hotel room at his beck and call, if you answer his booty call and
come over,
you can expect to be treated accordingly. I'm sorry, but like, you know, and we ladies forget this, but we wouldn't want it any other way. Right? Because, you know, if men didn't care about the way that women behaved and presented themselves, there would be all-out sex war. Actually, there was an all-out sex war over men's indifference to the way that women behaved, and it was called Me Too. And like, you want your man, when you get one you really like, after hopping from dick to dick for like half a decade or whatever we liberated millennial women do, you want your man to be selective of you and protective over you, which means that he was judgmental and discerning, and it means that he respects some women more than others,
which is fine. These girls also have a fundamental misunderstanding of how respect works. They think that it's owed to them for no reason, that they can completely disrespect themselves, make these craven decisions,
And then have some guy who's like busted his hump, even if he came from like whatever, an upper middle class background, he's a white cishet male. Respect them.
He did the work.
I'd like to quote a friend of the pod, Dasha's roommate, Kyle Brown, News and Updates. He said we were like drunk at one night, and he said, you don't demand respect, you command respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you definitely don't cry about it 6 years later on a Stalinist Instagram account.
Yeah, and
about
like
how it wasn't afforded to you. All of these accounts are I'm like, oh, it sounds like you played yourself.
Yeah,
like you should be canceling yourself.
You self-owned in the process of trying to like self-actualize or something,
and accrue clout completely.
Yeah,
because Rafman's the only successful person in Montreal. Not the only, but
that's not true. There has to be like one or two other guys.
No, of course, but
Luca Magnotta,
Leonard Cohen.
Oh yeah,
he's from Montreal.
Oh yeah, he's French Canadian. Yeah,
but we're whatever. Like Montreal, great city, had a ball there, but ultimately provincial. Like
yeah.
So of course the failed artist milieu of Montreal has hostility towards Rafman, who has transcended that.
Yeah, he has transcended that
based on his merits. And that's the worst part of of her account, is when it's so long. Yeah. And then it becomes this tangential thing about why doesn't anyone in a position of authority take responsibility for the emotional sexual abuse of the young and vulnerable? I've been called a pathetic girl. People have spread rumors about me saying I was easy, blah, blah, blah. Every time I see a new piece, exhibit, acquisition, or cataloging of Rafman's work, in quotes, it's as if I was pointed by a finger telling me my experience is worth nothing in the shadow of this predator's so-called genius. It has to stop.
Oh my God, he's not a predator. He's a professional, which is why you're mad. Have you seen that Martin Scorsese
and
short?
Why would your like totally banal experience of like of a hookup that didn't pan out the way you wanted it to, i.e. becoming someone's muse, girlfriend, whatever, someone acknowledging and validating you, why would that have anything to do with Rafman's so-called genius? What does his work and identity as an artist have to do with the fact that he disappointed you in 2014?
Well, and also interestingly, like the way that she describes or like characterizes her original attraction to him, that he was like a jet-setting kind of like talented hot male artist or whatever. It has nothing to do with him as a person. It's not a real attraction. It's like
no, like all of these accounts are like about his mystique.
Yeah, which is like constructed. Zizek had a great line where he was talking about like the kind of pathological narcissist, like functional psychotic of today, who when he, let's say, falls in love with a woman and she asks him that like kind of leading and difficult question, well, why do you love me? He says, well, because you have beautiful eyes, or you have great legs, or you have great tits, or a wonderful sense of humor, you're witty. And it's all these kind of like commodified characteristics when, and in Zizek's mind, and I think he answers this like very articulately, he says, well, the only correct answer is saying, I don't know, I'm just so drawn to you in this ineffable, amorphous way.
Yeah,
because I find that you're like a beautiful, wonderful person. It's not like, analyzing somebody as like a set of marketable, concrete characteristics.
Which is how all of these girls treated Rafman.
Yeah, and they get complained that they like to complain that they get scrapped for parts. It's always a shit. Well, he told me he liked blondes, or he liked Asians, or he liked brunettes, or he liked big tits or small tits,
John
or
didn't
whatever.
seem to show any interest in these girls at all, which was part of the problem.
Yeah, but it's always like they feel commodified, but they treat men as if they're also like weird ciphers. They don't treat them as human beings. Nobody does. It's like mutual.
Yeah, sure.
And
the objectification is happening in both avenues.
Yeah, and it's like, people are horny and have like needs that they want to be met or whatever, but neither side is really interacting with with each other. They're interfacing.
Well, so I had someone, because I also defended him on my stories. I had someone, the only person, mostly, the thing is, it's also, everyone sees this for the charade that it is, for the most part.
Yes, yeah.
And some fucking girl from Montreal was like, actually, he's crossed the line with a lot of younger women. And I said to her, I said, well, that line didn't exist in 2014 because that was when like hooking up randomly with people on Tinder was very much the norm.
Yeah.
And that this line was drawn in retroactively for political gain.
Yes. It was a fully cynical strategic calculation. We need a new BCAD temporal delineation that's like before and after Epstein. B-E and A-E.
What do you say more?
No, I'm just kidding. Like,
Harvey. Harvey was the real.
Yeah, I guess.
Harvey,
yeah.
I guess.
But that's like post Harvey. That's my rap name. When I become like a Zoom or SoundCloud rapper. But it's like, there's a point where this whole thing became like militarized.
Totally instrumentalized, weaponized. Once again, the logic of it's the weaponization of like marketing logic.
Yeah.
In like tag every institution, write in one cohesive voice, create this cohesive like social justice brand,
like narrative.
Yeah. To weaponize against people that you are jealous of, feel wronged by, etc., who haven't actually transgressed against you in any way beyond the way that people transgress against each other constantly.
Like routinely. Like, okay, like what's his worst defense? He was kind of a dismissive asshole, maybe. Who cares?
Yeah, that shouldn't have any bearing on his life or work.
Yeah.
And in a time when
culture isn't real.
He said come over and they came over. That's not victim blaming. Yeah. Because these women are not victims. So I got into it with Anne Hirsch on Twitter, who was like, well, what's the difference between a womanizer and a predator? And I said, womanizers are desirable. And then I guess later on, in the case of Rafman, they can be called predators retroactively when it becomes like politically, socially expedient to do so. And she said, so you're saying functionally there's no difference except for optics. And I was like, no, actually desire is the function. It is the functional difference. It's that women have agency. Mm-hmm. They're not being, unless you think that women are intrinsically prey, who have no autonomous desires of their own, which these girls can't even deny. All of their allegations are like loaded with their projections onto John and their desires for him and their desires for fame and
and again their desire comforts. It's inauthentic.
Yeah.
And it's not a good faith desire. It's not because they looked at him and had some spiritual connection and were like, he's a compelling and attractive individual outside of his career.
She had but one desire, again quoting Anne-Marie, French last name, I had but one desire, to dive in headfirst into the contemporary art scene.
Yeah.
It's like in the first few sentences of her account. It's like
she tells on herself. She completely exposes her underlying motivations. And like, there's this great scene in Time of Indifference, which is like a book Alberto Moravia wrote when he was 23 and then was like banned by the fascist government of Italy, about the matriarch of the family who's walking down like a kind of a shopping district in like bourgeois, I don't remember when, it's like Rome or something, fantasizing about stunting on her bourgeois rivals with her new fiance. She's like widowed and has this new fiance who it turns out is a speculator and a charlatan and is only with her because he wants to like claim her property that her dead husband left behind, and is at the same time finger blasting and like raping her young adult daughter. And it's like, well, this is when you operate like this, you get karmic retribution. You're perennially kind of rejected and unsatisfied in life.
Yeah.
Because your intentions aren't pure.
Yeah, you're spiritually bankrupt.
Yeah, and you know what's even worse, a more bitter pill to swallow than finding out that people sucked dick to get ahead? It's finding out that people didn't have to suck dick to get ahead because they were like worthy and talented and hardworking on their own.
Or that you sucked dick and didn't get ahead because you're ultimately not.
Yeah, or that you didn't, you know. But again, this is the legacy of Moira Donegan. All this fucking list making.
Totally. And once again, the list making.
Point tallying.
The calling on institutions for accountability. This was a comment I saw. I mean, it's very upsetting because it feels like it sets a precedent that's very disturbing.
I mean, it's perverse to appeal to institutions to save you.
Completely. Remove all works by Jon Rafman and speak publicly about what you will do to hold him and yourselves accountable. Follow that up with action. You can't hide from this. Y'all are going out of style. And then tagging surviving the art world. They have this veritable mob of middling BPD art thoughts. I'll say it. I'm not scared of them. I'm not scared of these stupid
what are they going to do to
bitches?
us?
Exactly. They can't do anything.
These corset wearing cottagecore.
I'll say it. They're not even cottagecore. They're so boring. They're like the most boring Canadian jilted groupie BPD girls.
I like French Canadians. They're chaotic and psychotic.
Me too. But they've like, the mob is made up of these people who are little tyrants.
Yeah, they are. And it's like, again, like what do you hope to accomplish by removing X artists' works from view in posterity, like forever? This person who's not even, again, Jeff Koons or like Mike Kelly or like blue chip guy is canceled forever. People forget about him. What does that accomplish? It makes you feel...
It's not going to make you a better artist, sweetie.
No, it's not. It makes you feel less bad because you don't have to confront your own failure on a day-to-day basis.
Because you're pretending that every time you see a Rafman acquisition, you're triggered by the unfortunate consensual sex that you had.
Yeah. Which,
that doesn't seem like anyone's problem but your own.
In an alternate universe, needn't be unfortunate, you know? It's only unfortunate because things didn't go your way. Right. And or the guy was ugly. You know?
Right.
That's why women call, sexual assault when it's not criminal. It's because you didn't get your gig or the guy was unattractive.
Well, but Rafman isn't even a gallerist or a curator or anything. Like, what could he have realistically even done for these girls except for become their, like, boyfriend and chaperone them through the, like
daddy mentor figure.
Yeah, that's clearly what they wanted, and they're in the willful denial of that is...
Listen, I've been trying to get Steve Bannon to pay attention to me.
What do you love about me? He's like, China hands. Oh man, I don't know. It feels like an attack on the avant-garde. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
it truly does, and not just because I'm friends with Rafman and because like I feel an affinity with him and his work or anything, but it's like I don't want to live in a world where people can anonymously seek to, whether or not they'll be successful remains to be seen, but like to destroy the lives of like people who are guilty of nothing but like maybe poor sexual conduct.
Yeah, poor social conduct.
Yeah, or like, and they're...
Which, by the way, isn't that the whole thing that you were attracted by? That he was kind of a freewheeling, irreverent pervert, bad boy?
And shouldn't artists be perverts?
Yeah.
Like, what do you really want from, especially because the art world is already this, as you've said, like a barnacle on finance. It's already like a inherently corrupt institution.
Yeah, it's an elite overproduction factory. It's churning it out.
Yeah.
It's like the factory farm of like over-credentialed, obsolete people.
So what is this cognitive dissonance of then demanding that successful artists be somehow like moral actors?
Yeah.
When the thing that would like possess someone to rise to the heights of success in the art world would be probably something like I don't know, something like perverted or interesting or
dark, like not normative.
And they all say as much, like his twisted mind. And
I liked
his nihilistic visions were making my pussy so wet that I just
his dystopian accelerationist finger blasting really turned me on.
I mean, oops. I mean, I didn't like it. I mean, what?
No, it reminds me of that short that Martin Scorsese made starring, I don't remember if it's Patricia or Rosanna Arquette, the skinnier one. They're both hot, but one of them's skinnier.
Yeah.
And then Nick Nolte, and Nick Nolte's like kind of like a sweaty, fat male artist, and she's like a hot nymphet groupie that he tries to elevate, and she kind of like ends up like almost proto-canceling him and treats him very poorly and goes back to her little shitty town where she came from. And it's like this parable of like the way that like male and female interests intersect in the art world, where like women enjoy the kind of patronage and mentorship of men, but then resent the fact that they enjoy it, so they have to like lash out and cancel them.
Sure.
And men, I don't doubt that they're like opportunistic and exploitative in minute ways in terms of like getting their greasy fingers all the way up the vaginal canal. But at the end of the day, like women, again, I think a lot of this Me Too stuff is female resentment at their own like weakness and opportunism.
Right.
They have to like then repackage as external oppression or something.
And, per my exchange with Anne Hirsch, read desire being the functional difference between a womanizer and a predator. She then said that, desire can be a tool of manipulation, which is just a fundamental misunderstanding of what desire is. It's all seduction is manipulation.
I mean, it's technically true in a very crude, coarse way. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's because seduction is often about an imbalance of like power or information or like, that's what it is. It's about like relinquishing kind of some agency to something outside of yourself in the throes of kind of erotic experience or something.
Well, yeah, but it's like the power imbalance is not one-sided. Again, it's not like a zero-sum game. It's like a prisoner's dilemma. The guy is physically repulsive, but rich and well-connected, and you are a insouciant, manipulative little tart with a tight and poreless body that he's never going to possess otherwise.
Right.
It's a mutual power imbalance.
Right.
He can only get a girl like you because he's attained a certain level of wealth and status.
Right.
Otherwise, he'd be consigned to like being an incel on like Reddit forums.
But someone like Rafman who could be indicted of maybe being a womanizer at some point half a decade ago isn't, because he is not physically repulsive, because he has cultivated a mystique via his like talent and success, which is why these women sought him out.
I think Rafman's, I mean, I've always thought he was pretty cute. He looks, he's kind of like the Harrison Ford of the art world. He has that kind of like
very cute
blonde Jew thing going that I like.
His autism is so charming and like beguiling. I can understand why these girls wanted to be close to it. What I cannot understand is why they like what their ends are now. Like what?
I mean, I think they feel precarious and marginal. I mean, I sympathize with them on some level. It's like once you meet these guys,
like the girl who started. I looked at her website, which had basically a brief blurb about how she was a writer and artist cultural. No, exactly. Okay. Well, that's my point. There was absolutely nothing. There was like 2 sentences about sort of what she was interested in, which was vague and meaningless, and then the contact link that's linked to her email. Like, she doesn't make art. She doesn't like what
she wants reply guys to contact her. I mean, but also like I said this too, it's like, okay, the distinction between a womanizer and a predator is that a womanizer doesn't have to be a predator because he's already desirable to women and they flock to him.
Right. and it is specifically that women's desire, which is so absent from the conversation, women's motivations, their desires, these surviving the art world accusers have to be like willfully blind to.
Yeah,
they have to deny. They have to say, "I don't know what happened. We ended up sleeping together."
I just fell on his dick, even though he was tapping my best friend.
Fuck him, and I did, and I wanted to fuck him maybe for nefarious or narcissistic or self-serving reasons, and that those desires were not served.
My thing is, if you're going to be like evil and manipulative, don't be so small time. Set your sights higher.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Get yourself like a Kissinger or a Bannon.
Well, they wouldn't be able to.
Like some decaying.
Those guys aren't on Tinder.
Yeah, they're not. They're on Raya.
Henry Kissinger's Raya.
Yeah, he's like 107 years old. The flesh is like decaying off of his bones.
Right, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to attempt to destroy someone's life.
Do you hear that? They're cheering for our hard-hitting analysis.
Yeah, they're love it. Yes, Jon
Rafman! We should make some merch that says, "I survived the art world and all I got was this lousy t-shirt."
Survivors. God. These survivors are...
I hate that
so
too.
Brave.
It's like, have you ever been to like Bosnia? Should we talk about the public sex thing?
Yeah.
You have some public sex stuff to say, and also some networking stuff. There was an article in the Daily Dot, which is like a non-entity of a publication. Public sex is at the center of a queer culture war by Anna Valens. Yeah. That's a lie. This isn't totally made up, but whatever. I, for one, am happy. I welcome the opportunity to mock these people, to take our minds off of the actual culture war raging.
Yeah. I mean, this was an article that was circulating because many people were kind of dunking on it. Maybe because my feed is a little more trad than others, but it was basically about queer public sex becoming subdued. Why is sex supposed to be invisible? Other pleasurable acts or acts of communication are routinely performed in public. Is sex so deadly, hateful, and horrific that we can't permit it to be seen? Are naked bodies so ugly or so shameful that we can't survive the sight of bare tushes or genitals without withering away?
Yes. Naked bodies are ugly and embarrassing. If you've ever seen people having sex in a non-porn setting, like accidentally, it's really embarrassing. No matter how hot the people are, it's like flesh slapping and corny.
I mean, unless... I will say you are voyeuristically spying on someone having sex privately.
Yeah. But like...
That's very different. That's, when I'm peeping through my neighbor's windows.
Shout out to the shirtless girl next door.
I saw two couples.
Four people. Yeah.
I saw two separate couples fucking last week when I was on the roof of my new apartment. Nice. And you know that I was watching.
And zooming in.
It actually wasn't repulsive because they were so far away that I was able to kind of like project sort of my fantasies onto their kind of like blurry forms. I kept being like, oh my God, she's jacking him off. And Kat was like, she's not. They were just lying there.
They're just watching TV.
Yeah, I'm like, no, his dick is out. I see it. It's so big.
It's like, Dasha, you're projecting.
But that's the voyeuristic thrill, which is a totally different conversation.
It's different, but like, okay, the reason that sex is not permitted in public, it is permitted. Like nobody even polices it that much. She says that the moral panic over gay public sex has grown. That's like literally not true. I can't think of anything farther from the truth. Like it just nobody cares. But the reason that like sex should not be purely public, whatever that means, is because it's like hotter when it's private and clandestine and taboo.
Exactly. Is that this article is touching at something, it's touching at the hem of some truth, but it spends...
I love that. That's beautiful. Touching at the hem. Clinging to the hem.
Yeah,
the petticoats.
It's trying to rip off the petticoats of truth and expose its realness, but what it's, it spends all this time kind of focusing on queerness rather than like publicness.
Yeah.
And like the real conversation to be had is about what it means to be in public. And like surely they're not advocating for, although some of the quotes in the article are a little would lead you to believe that, but that they are advocating for like people having sex out in the streets. But really Montreal, I brought this up on the pod after I went to Montreal, after I went to the porn theater. Yeah. There's a book called Times Square Red, Times Square Blue by Sam
Red Scare, Times Square.
Red Square Blue Time. By Samuel R. Delaney, who is gay and black, by the way. He that's about sort of the Times Square 70s kind of like movie theater jack-off scene that was, pushed out by kind of the development of New
corporate
York
developers
in the mid 80s. And the thesis of sorry, I'm pulling it
We're like
up.
really drunk and scrolling.
I've had two rosés, but somehow
true. I've only had like half of one, but I'm already drunk.
I know. I
had a very tall marg last night because I did my taxes. I was telling Dasha I feel very accomplished. I feel sexier than ever after wading through 1099 forms.
So here's Delaney's thesis. Given the mode of capitalism under which we live, life is at its most rewarding, productive, and pleasant when large numbers of people understand, appreciate, and seek out inter-class contact and communication conducted in a mode of goodwill. The class war raging constantly and often silently in the comparatively stabilized societies of the developed world perpetually works for the erosion of the social practices through which inter-class communication takes place and of the institutions holding those practices stable. And that sort of links, it's two essays, one's like specifically about his experiences and the other sort of extrapolates on them, but that's sort of the idea, is that these like something like jack-off theaters like Times Square in the 70s, that there used to be spaces where there could be interclass contact.
Yeah, that's a really incredible, amazing point that like bears repeating. that was, what did you call it? Like not an encounter, but it was like...
Well, he goes on to make the difference between contact and networking.
Okay.
And that contact is something that happens sort of publicly, but also intimately and spontaneously in the spirit of goodwill, as he says, that has this kind of vitality that comes from like living amongst other people.
Yeah.
And that networking differs in that it's this very like career-driven, professionalized socializing that happens in a sort of contained environment, like a writer's workshop or an art show or
of
something.
Homogenous people, whether even though they might be like racially or sexually diverse, it's still a very homogenous because they have the same goal.
Yeah, ultimately they share the same desire for whatever social material benefits that they can kind of get out of the networking structure, the networking experience.
Yeah. And it's, Lash talks about this in Revolt of the Elites, about the idea of like a third space or like a third sphere. He's quoting some other people. And his conceit is that schooling is different from education in a way, and that children learn. They learn when they eavesdrop on adults, and they have their most formative experiences in these kind of unofficial, spontaneous encounters.
Yeah.
And you know, Jane Jacobs also, I've quoted her a lot too, or like cited her a lot too, makes this point in her writings on kind of like gentrification and like the assault on like urban neighborhoods, that like all of the kind of worthwhile, favorable, mutually rewarding encounters happen spontaneously in this interclass way, and that there's virtually no space for that to happen now, because even if you look at New York now, it's basically a playground for the rich and a playground for the ultra poor, like lumpen. There's no in between, and they seldom interact, though I think they actually interact more than they do, you know, like...
Well, New York is still, what I was going to say is New York is the only, even though interclass contact is so diminished, it's still, New York remains one of the only places where it's possible.
It forces
somewhere like Los Angeles or Montreal, for example, people are less, they're not exposed as much to interclass conflict.
Other people's genitals.
I mean, it's, and in the spirit of goodwill is what's really important.
Yeah.
It's like, because we do see people, there is interclass kind of like ambient contact, but.
And actually what I really love about America as an immigrant is this casual, colloquial, chatty culture where people stop and talk.
Yeah.
Like, I was walking through the West Village the other day and there's like, it had rained, there was a puddle and this black lab had like plunked itself in the puddle, and I had like a moment of like interface of connectivity with the owner, because we were acknowledging how like stupid and cute this dog was.
Yeah.
And it's like these kind of sweet and tender moments of like mutual reinforcement that are like hard to come by, that don't exist in Russian culture, because everybody is like frowning and harrowed and ignoring each other, avoiding the stop and chat.
Yeah.
But it's weird. This whole article reads kind of like an 8th grade level research paper.
Yeah, it's
like
very
peppered with
poorly.
quotes.
Yeah.
It's like very.
And they had to, I don't know if you saw it, they had to amend it because they featured a tweet written by a minor on the most recent version. We'll link to it, but it's like, it says like we had to take
public sex is a thrill because it can happen anywhere. House parties, gay bars, parked cars, single-use restrooms, leather parties, the Wendy's near City Hall, the hotel bathroom at a gaming convention. Public sex has lost some of its popularity over the years thanks to the internet and modern cyber sex. But its taboo nature, ironically increased privacy away from the home, still renders it popular. And she like literally goes on to explain what public sex is. Mm-hmm. Public sex is a form of sexual contact that involves 2 or more people engaging in sexual activity in a public place.
Yes.
Amazing.
Well, the public
didn't know that.
The public is really what Warren's definition, not the sex act.
Yeah, there is no public anymore.
And even to that point, to like the internet sort of degrading the possibility for public sex is really like some of my most formative sexual experiences did happen in chat rooms, which were these kind of unproductive kind of like anonymous spaces for something more like contact than networking. And that the same sort of thing has happened. It's not the internet, it's that like the same thing that's happened to the public has happened to the internet, where like the internet has become increasingly networked, right? Social
and
networking.
Balkanized. Yeah. It's it's like public opinion management. Everything is managed and siloed. Mm-hmm. And like you only really see the opinions or views that you agree with, or those that you vehemently disagree with, so that you can get into like everything is like deliberately fractious and fragmented or whatever.
Right. And like linked to your identity, and you basically only have access to like something like whatever, like the like the AOL chat rooms that used to go into to find strangers to have cyber sex with God knows who they were. They were probably also like 12-year-old girls like myself,
That would be funny if you were actually like having cyber sex with other 12-year-old girls and not gross 50-year-old men.
Well, no, because for when I started cybering, I felt a tremendous amount of guilt.
Why?
Because of being Catholic and just my sexuality, whatever. I like was like, it felt more kind of sinful or something to cyber as myself. So I often cybered as a man.
Oh, okay.
As like a 12-year-old girl, I would like go in these chat rooms and like engage with strangers to have descriptive cyber sex, but I would like sort of take on like a male role.
Were you ever caught? Were you convincing?
How would they catch you? There was like, you were just a screen name.
Yeah.
And
nobody knew. I mean, and everybody was probably like inexperienced and nobody knew what.
And they were, who knows? There's exactly my point, is that who knows?
But this person argues that there's a double standard around who gets to have public sex and who doesn't, which fuels backlash against queers who have sex in bathroom stalls in park forests. Is there a double standard?
No.
Everybody knows that like gay people. The thing is, like, gay culture used to be in this way like really kind of taboo and edgy because gay guys had to cruise for sex.
This is exactly what Times Square Red, Times Square Blue is about.
Yeah, which is, you know.
But this article obfuscates exactly what that book is about, which is like class.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a queer thing. It's a class thing.
Yeah. And this person actually sort of dances around that. Like, people who can endorse or who have the privilege of endorsing or condemning public sex are people who are coming from a privileged vantage point because many people don't have a choice. But that's not a queer thing either. It's like, you know, how many times have I come home and there have been like some cishet teenagers from the project like literally finger blasting on my stoop because they have nowhere to go because they live in a small confined like kommunalka style living situation with their family. By the way, Americans have it very good because in the good old days in the Soviet Union, multiple families shared a bathroom.
Yeah.
At least you guys get your own private bathrooms.
Yeah.
But like then she brings up this incident. Remember that incident of like that person who threatened Pride goers because they were complaining about like too much.
I mean, I used to live in San Francisco and I would go to like the Folsom Street Fair, but I would see like guys fully sucking dick and like getting
in
their
public
tongues ashed in. I don't think there's definitely a sanctioned, because homosexuality has become so corporatized
like
and
normalized,
mainstreamed,
yeah.
mainstream. There is absolutely, in places like San Francisco at least, definitely a space for them to have public sex, but that it misses the point of exactly what Delaney talks about, which is like the interclass contact.
And they don't want to. The point is that they don't want to have public sex now because they're all HR managers and like Instagram influencers. Everybody's like maintaining their like skillfully crafted and curated image.
Or some of them do in some kind of like BDSM context, which is still very like socialized and like it's not an inner class kind of thing. It becomes this kind of like display of
clout,
power, clout, power, privilege, whatever, that like you are able to have sex in public.
One of the people she interviews calls public sex an act of rebellion to exist sexually when we're told not to. It's like, please, you're like the most major consumer demographic after women. People not only want you to exist, but they want you fucking and sucking in plain air. The corporations love it. Nike, Adidas, they're eating it up. They're like, by all means. And they go on. One time when I was 18 or 19, I had sex in a church with this guy my age who worked in the church and had the keys. It was good sex, but more importantly, it was kind of an act of revenge for how I felt I and countless other queer individuals before me have been devalued and demonized by the church.
No.
That's so awful. This is the whole problem,
awful.
Too. It's like, you shouldn't have sex in a church.
No. Even if you feel whatever, like inhibited or downtrodden by some religious institution, like that's not public sex. A church is not public. It's
blasphemous, profane sex, sacrilegious sex, whatever. But like
to advocate for something like that is despicable.
I'm glad I'm not religious because I would feel personally soiled and defiled going into a church where two like genderqueer or whatever, I don't care, whatever they are, individuals had fucked and sucked. But even if you promote this sort of thing, you don't want to normalize it. That's the thing. It's like once you start normalizing it, it loses all of its exciting.
It depends on its transgressive taboo, qualities to be meaningful.
Yeah. And like, you know, a society that's shameless, where everything is permissible because nothing is shameful, is a society that's beset by paranoia, paralysis, rage.
Sounds familiar.
It's a society where cancel culture, you know, so-called cancel culture thrives. Like, you know, in a traditional repressive society, people suffer from obsessional disorders and neuroses. In a kind of non-traditional permissive society, progressive society, people suffer from attention disorders and psychosis, because there's
like we have the best of both worlds.
We have like the latter. Zizek gave this a very good psychoanalytic spin, where he talks about how, like, we've passed from being a repressive society into a progressive society, and we've swapped the paternal ego that prohibits for the maternal superego that orders or directs. So, like, the paternal ego was maybe like judgmental and authoritarian, but it appealed to like a higher conscience and a common standard. And the maternal superego is like far more punitive and primitive, archaic. So we have the society where like anything goes. You can do anything you want. You can be anything you put your mind to. But actually, that's not true, because you'll get like killed and eaten if you actually express yourself.
You can have sex off Tinder until you live to regret it.
Until, God forbid, you meet some 21-year-old Montreal art groupie who has set her sights on transcending your art career.
Reading sort of Delaney's writing on contact versus networking really made me think about Rafman again, especially because there's a moment where he there's a portion of the second essay where he talks about being a like working as a professor at an artist residence, at a writer's retreat residency, whatever, and fucking one of his students.
Okay.
And then because he already thought that the student was talented, and then thought he had moxie, whatever, it was like more complicated than just like him sucking and fucking him. It was like he gave him some names of editors that he could use his name to kind of appeal to, and none of them wanted to publish his work, and then he never wrote anything again. And it was sort of like about this individual's overestimation of networking, of networking's use.
Networking is actually a pretty weak force. It doesn't really work if you have nothing to offer. And by the way, when I say like nothing to offer, I don't mean that you have to be like exceptionally talented or good. You just have to be hardworking and easy to work with. Like the most successful people I've learned in the last 2 years, going from like a poverty person to like a normal managerial class, middle class person, is that like the most successful people, especially in creative industries, are just like normies who are easy to work with. That's all it is.
But when we talk about the PMC, the professional managerial class, we're not just talking about like a class status. We're talking about a mindset, right? Like the same way that marketing logic infected politics and social media, I feel like networking infiltrated those same people's like relationships
and psyches. Yeah,
exactly. And that for these girls who are attempting to cancel Rafman, the art world for them was a social sphere where they imagined that they would be discovered, celebrated, validated, someone powerful like Rafman would do something nice for them because of their talent. And the bitter, sad fact is that they simply lacked that, and that no amount of networking, and that's where their like PMC wires got crossed, right? Is that they like what they were doing to Rafman was networking. They were trying to like, and they happened to have sex with him, which might seem more like a contact like tactic or something. But it was completely within the context of like they had sex with him because they wanted something. Yeah. And
it used to be like a 2-martini lunch, and now it's like fucking and sucking in a boutique hotel in Montreal.
And Delaney says something very smart where he says, networking produces more opportunities to network. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's all...
Who is this man? That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's true.
And so these girls fucked Jon Rafman. It didn't advance their art careers. All they got was more opportunities to maybe fuck Jon Rafman. Or like maybe... to have more meaningless sex with net artists.
Yeah.
And they're bitter about it. and that all that networking situations do is kind of replicate structures of, Delaney says, this knowledge and desire. He used this kind of like Foucauldian framework, but it's not wrong. It's like the desire for the social material benefits that everyone who is networking is hoping to glean, that are in scarce supply. We cannot all be art stars, you know?
The paradox is that if you're good enough, you don't need to network. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you don't need to social climb or network. It just like kind of happens spontaneously, which people don't want to admit. Like all this kind of networking stuff maybe works in like sales or something where you have to like make marginal incremental gains. Yeah. But generally speaking, like it's way overvalued.
Completely. No one who's truly talented has accomplished anything through networking alone.
I think networking may have yielded some positive things for them just by being like, you know, meet my manager's manager.
Yeah, you meet someone. Kind of like shit. You know, I've been as an aspiring activist, I've found myself in many situations where I've had to leverage my sexuality in the hopes of like of a network or something, and that many of those ventures did not pan out, but to deny my agency and responsibility in those acts would be insane. It's insane and deranged.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. The assumption is that you come into like a networking situation with like some value add or value proposition or whatever. I'm probably not using those words correctly.
They wanted Rafman to like validate them and find them to be talented or inspiring or, you know, and
well, they wanted him to introduce them to like the major players and heavy hitters of his scene without having contributed anything of their own through sexuality alone. Yeah. I think that's what women generally want on some level and are dishonest about. And like, you know, again, I'm not opposed to that actually. That's a viable way of being. Like being a wife or a mistress, but you have to be upfront with yourself that that's what you want. And if that is indeed what you want, then you have to act accordingly. You have to be accommodating, and you have to subordinate your ego to that of the man who's like the kind of like major player. That's how it goes.
Do you want to be a good girlfriend or do you want to be a great artist?
Yeah, it's a. I mean,
you have to pick one.
Yeah, you do. I ask myself this every day. It's hard. It's like
you can toe the line.
Yeah.
Especially with like you and Eli, like you guys are in very different. Eli's not going to ever do anything for you, and
I'm definitely not going to ever do anything. Like, hey, you want to come on our podcast and say how much you hate women? And he's like, yes. No, but this is like the beauty of it. It's like you have to date somebody who's like, you know, adjacent enough to you that you have like a similar value system, but you should never date somebody in your field. Like the worst possible kind of like scenario I can think of is like two post-internet artists dating each other.
Right.
It's like a horrifying reality. Like you don't want to be
even worse, some aspiring net artist dating a more successful net artist.
I know. This is why I date musicians by and large, or like photographers or whatever, like adjacent creative industry people. Musicians are cool because they generally have comparatively large and veiny hands because they physically handle stuff. I don't know. I mean, but I don't give a shit about music. I'm not interested enough to be, you know what I mean? Like my interest in Eli, for example, is out of like this kind of like weird ambient amorphous love. Yeah. I don't want to network for him. I want to like help him achieve. I don't understand what he does. I don't really care about music or the ins and outs of whatever bleepity bloop scene, but I'm going to probably have to edit this out because he's going to like backhand me for this. No. But I believe in him and his vision, you know what I mean? Yeah. In this kind of like amorphous blob sort of way. And I can't imagine, like...
And that's the difference, again, between contact and networking.
Yeah. And by the way, men like when women have their own thing going on and, like, their own vision.
Yeah.
Unless they're losers, in which case you don't want to date.
Or, like, I mean, being a muse is also a, like, you know, viable path if you have the moxie, if you will, to, like, pull it off. And my first boyfriend was a painter. Or one of my first boyfriends.
the Armenian?
The Armenian was my, like, I was like 19. Yeah, he was like 10 years my senior. But there wasn't...
He groomed you. He groomed.
But we had, like, you know, he had a burgeoning art career. He was attractive to me for a lot of other reasons besides that. But, you know, that didn't diminish my attraction to him. And he, like, painted portraits of me, and we would go to, like, Milan and London and Switzerland and stuff, and go to these art openings, and, like, which was great. From, like, yeah, I was in college. I didn't know what I wanted out of life.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, but he wouldn't have liked you if you had some sort of ambition that entailed edging into his territory. If you were like, hey, can you, like, get me gallery representation or something? That's the thing. It's like, even if, like, worst case, most cynical case scenario, if you're going to be a craven gold digger, at least kind of, like, downplay your ambitions to compete with the man in the field.
Yeah, at least be strategic.
Yeah, and, like, these women are just so clunky and clumsy. They, like, let it all out within the first hour, let alone the first night. So of course, like, nobody wants to, like, I don't know.
Even their cancellation attempts are, like, clumsy. They tell on themselves at every turn.
Yeah. But by the way, even, like, this is my thing too with artists. Artists should be dark, troubled, immoral, fucked up people.
Someone has to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, these girls had no business trying to be in the art world.
Well, yeah. That's the thing. I mean, the art world is not a democracy.
They simply were not... Right. It's not a democracy. It's barely a meritocracy. It takes a lot of others, you know, not only were they not talented enough to hack it, they weren't smart enough. And you have to...
that's the bigger problem. Well, I liked what you said on the last episode. You're like, I feel capable and able-bodied to, like, navigate the male, whatever, patriarchal system on my own terms as a world, woman. Yeah. I don't want a kind of, like, blanket insurance or blanket security, like feminism, to come and save me from my own incompetence. I'd rather hack it on my own and be, like, disappointed and failed.
Yeah. But maybe, I don't know, maybe you live with that failure long enough and you end up starting a Surviving the Art World Instagram account.
Yeah. I'm just going to start a competing Surviving the Art World Instagram.
Surviving the real art world.
Yeah. This one time they made me drink house wine at Forlini's and I vomited on Bayard Street by Central Booking. And then I went to China Chalet.
I was manipulated by a guy because he had a burgeoning art career and a cooler loft than me. And that power imbalance in retrospect just makes me really uncomfortable.
I'm really horny.
And horny. I have a Delaney quote to close.
Oh yeah, let's close it up with Delaney.
Per Contact, he says, contact and its human rewards are fundamental to cosmopolitan culture, to its art and its literature, to its politics and its economics, to its quality of life. Relationships are always relationships of exchange, semiotic exchange at the base, in a field where, as Foucault explained, knowledge, power, and desire all function together in an opposition within a field of discourse. To repeat, contact relationships cannot be replaced by network-style relationships because in any given network group, the social competition is so great that the price on social materials and energies exchange is too high to affect emotional and if not material profit. If we can talk of social capital, for those who would enjoy a truly outrageous metaphor, while networking may produce a small, steady income, both maintains the social field of the pleasant. and provides as well the high interest returns that make cosmopolitan life wonder-filled and rich. And I think that the art world should retain a kind of cosmopolitanism that it frankly lacks in like a globalized PMC.
Yeah, as no identity.
Yeah. Like there should be gatekeepers. These Montreal art thought losers should not have a platform.
Yeah.
Jon Rafman should.
Yeah.
Because he has done the work. He's not a successful artist by accident.
Yeah, I say social democracy, socialism in politics, a brute form of social Darwinism in the art world, which is irrelevant and elitist. You can't govern
truly
tastes and aesthetics by democracy. It doesn't work that way. You need gatekeepers who are often cruel and also abusive and probably pedophiles.
And if any institutions capitulate to the demands of a mob of literal losers, of literal failures, then all that really, like, more than John's transgressions against female bodies, it speaks to those institutions as being failure, like also profoundly failed.
Yeah, he's such a horrible person. He didn't finger blast any artists of color. What's wrong with him? He only went for those white girls.
Truly, it would be disgraceful for institutions to distance themselves from Rafman because of these very banal and middling accusations.
I feel so bad for this guy because we've really fucked him over twofold, because not only is he fucked because he got canceled, but now he has us standing him and he's going to get canceled twofold.
I mean, I don't know. You have to draw a line in this. First, they came for the perverted Jewish artists, and
then they came for the podcasters.
And I said nothing because I was not a perverted Jewish artist. Then they came for the podcasters, and there was no one left to speak for me.
I'm gonna DM Glenn Greenwald. Glenn, have you heard of a John Rafman? ...
See you in hell.
See you in hell. He's like, what? No, the civil rights lawyer.